I want to be able to change everything and then put it on the move. Okay? So I've just put this on the move the way it is. Make sure you look at move when you're studying for time. And whatever you do in an exam, anything, midterm, whatever you're getting coming up, don't make the same mistake, right? Because for me, I just have to say, I made a mistake. For you, you lose a few points on the exam, right? I guess that's not funny, but you understand what I'm saying. It didn't cost me anything. We were arteries and veins, and where were we? Here, right? Let's not get behind. We're running close towards the end. We're approaching Friday. We've got to cover a lot of material. I'm not going to slow down for anybody unless you got a good question, okay? And if you want to talk, go ahead, none of my business. All right, arteriolar. Now, you know arteriolar is the same picture we had before. We're going to see it again and again. You'll have, like I told you before, you're going to have it memorized by the time we're done. But it's got a lot of muscle, smooth muscle coating, all right? As a matter of fact, cartoon, what are they? They only show you the muscle coating. Well, I guess maybe there's somewhere in there. But mostly, cartoons will just say muscle. Okay? We call them the resistance vessels. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. They're highly innervated here, highly muscular. Okay, that's one step at a time. Normal arteriolar tone. We've heard that word before. That's what tone means. That means tonic, chronic, there's something going on. We talk about sympathetic tone, right? That means there's some sympathetic activity all the time. Now, with that going on, you can increase the number of action potentials going down, right? Decrease or increase sympathetic tone, more activity. Or you can decrease the number of action potentials, right? Decrease sympathetic tone. Same thing with vasodilation, vasoconstriction. If you don't have vascular tone, you're wide open. You have no choice. You could close it off, but you can't get in, you can't open anymore. So everything's kept at a tone so you can go in either direction, okay? It's called tone. Something's always there. All right. Anyway, here we go. Vasoconstriction, you know the term? All right. That's going to decrease the radius. Right? That's what they're showing you. And what does that do to blood flow?
Decrease.
There we have that. R to the fourth power, right? Decrease organ perfusion. All right, let's go with vasodilation. What now? Right? Increase the radius. What happens to flow?
Increase.
Increase, right? Increase organ perfusion, okay? The reason I'm bringing that up in one of the last lectures we're going to talk about it. Every organ is supplied by arteriole. And every organ can regulate that smooth muscle on that arteriole to meet whatever its demands are. If it wants blood flow, it'll turn it off. If it doesn't want it, it turns it off. Organs can do that, okay? Now on this side is the effects of sympathetic. You know what sympathetic is? They innervate the blood vessels, right? And you release norepinephrine. That's going to do what to smooth muscle? Constrict, right? So you're going to get vasoconstriction with increased sympathetic tone. This kind of vocabulary for you, get used to it, because when you talk about it on an exam, you'll get it again and again. Because you're going to go into mixing everything during certain situations, ischemia, whatnot, exercise. All right. Now, decrease sympathetic tone, remove the sympathetic, you're going to get what? Vasodilation, right? Same thing. We'll come back to this again, right? All right. You remember this diagram. You've seen this plenty of times, right? Is that right? Mean pressure and comes down. Biggest pressure drop across the arterioles, right? This person doesn't even use the term arteriole. Yeah, you've got a ward or a large artery. No, just call them resistance vessels. And that's why I've been using that term interchangeably as well. When you're reading something like this, arteriolar are your resistance vessels. But some people just don't even bother with the word arteriolar. They just go, your resistance vessels behave this way. You're supposed to know it's arteriolar, right? They expect you to know that. Anyway, these are resistance vessels. My point being here, you saw this on the previous slide, right? Vasoconstriction. You got a cardiac output coming through here, right? Whatever liters a minute you want, 5, 6, 4, whatever. It's coming through, right? And you're sitting like this for 2, and now you're gonna, this is the resistance vessel, you're gonna constrict. What are you gonna do? Reduce the calibered lumen, right? Just make it smaller. What's gonna happen to pressure upstream? And that's what you're seeing, right? Is that right? Is that right? Just focus up here. Let's forget that. Now, let's say you vasodilate. Same concept. Cardiac output's coming through, and all of a sudden you go, oop, open this wide up. What's going to happen to pressure upstream? Yeah. Is that what happens?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Now you'll notice when we get downstream, it's just the opposite. Let's worry about that in the next lecture, right? For now, this is easy to understand, right? If you increase sympathetic tone or anything else, you're going to increase resistance. You're going to raise aortic pressure, arterial pressure, right? And that's what you want to do if you're going into shock, right? You want to bring pressure back up. Sympathetic spikes, they constrict all your peripheral blood vessels. All right, this okay?
Yes.
That's arterial. Most important thing they do, everything everybody talks about, is used to maintain blood pressure. And you're going to get a whole lecture on that, acute regulation of blood pressure. It's all based on arterial, okay? Regulating flow to these different organs. In terms of the veins, thin wall, I'll buy that. They're also, how do you like that word? Highly distensible. Remember we were talking about compliance?
Yes.
I said there's not that much of a difference. People use them interchangeably. Well, there's a proof of that. This person likes to use the word distensibility, okay? There's a minor difference between that. We don't have to get involved with that. Most textbooks use that. You know what distensible means, right? Or compliant, yeah, sure. They'll take whatever you give them, right? All right. And it's also referred to as a blood reservoir. We'll cover veins as well. That's kind of a unique feature in veins, especially in the periphery. But for now, blood reservoir. Why do you call it blood reservoir? Well, I'm sure being in Riyadh in the middle of the desert, there's a reservoir out there somewhere. It's in some towns in the west or somewhere, they'll have a big tank of water sitting above a little town. It contains all their water. That's where they get their water from. I don't know where the reservoir is here, a lake or something. They get their water from somewhere. You have to. We have it in our tap. Yeah, we're surrounded by a desert. Somewhere there's a reservoir, so we get water. This is storage, and that's why they call the vein the reservoir, blood reservoir, because they store the bloodline. They have most of your bloodline. Right? They're compliant, they're distensible, perfect for storage, okay, of a lot of volume. Remember, in the arterial side, the water was considered a pressure reservoir. It was storing the pressure. Remember, the ventricle contracts, elastic, and then the ventricle going to athlete. It stored the pressure and then keeping it and forcing fluid downstream, right? Elastic recoil. All right, so the veins, low pressure, low resistance system. That's a low pressure, low resistance. A couple of numbers here for you, just for kicks. Periphery, somewhere down here or your legs or somewhere. We know that vein pressure is low, right? What do we got? Okay, even here. Somewhere around 1, right? Is that right? Somewhere around there. It has to be above right atrial pressure. Otherwise, you don't move towards the right atrium and back towards the heart. If your venous pressure is 0, your right atrial pressure is 1, it's going the other way. Not the right way, right? So we put it at 6. Some people would say 5, 4, depending on what you measure. All right. Okay. Now, because of the thin walls, you can collapse that. Where do we collapse them? Okay, let's say venous pressure is around 2 or 3 or whatever it is here. And now you have abdominal organs. They can compress the vein, right? You can put pressure on. If you want to look at it in an extreme case, you have a very distensible, very compliant blood vessel, low pressure system, and you put a brick on it. Guess what's going to happen? You crush it. Collapse, right? It's a pressure grade. You got too much pressure on there, you're going to stop flow. So anyway, abdominal organs exert some pressure. It becomes really problematic in females when they get pregnant and they got a fetus there. That's a lot of pressure being put on your vein, okay, in the abdomen. When you get to a thoracic pressure, you don't have respiratory yet, but Your respiratory system works on negative pressure. If you measure pressure in the thorax, it's negative. Okay? Everybody's looking at me with a blind eye. Again, I spent too much time with it. Didn't you guys go to high school and they had this little experiment where they put a balloon in a can, they call it a lung. And at the bottom they had a rubber thing and they pulled on it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
What that does is your diaphragm's contracting, intercostal muscles out, it's creating a negative pressure, and your lungs expand. When you're breathing in, you're not forcing positive pressure. No, whatever atmospheric pressure is, that's what's going in there. But for it to move, the air to move, you have to create a negative pressure inside, in your thorax. Otherwise, it ain't going to work. All right? In other words, the only time something moves, the blood vessel wall, is because of a pressure, transmural pressure gradient. All right, let's get back to this. Low resistance. I guess what I'm showing you, you start filling this vein. It's called distensible, compliant, no problem. You make it this big. Okay, put more volume into it, maybe pressure went up a little bit. Put more volume into it, now you got maybe more, a little bit pressure. You know, it's flaccid, you can open it, close it, right? And if you lower the pressure too much, you'll just collapse. Right? So in a thoracic region, you have a negative pressure, and you see how they've drawn this wider? Because the pressure inside the vein is higher than the pressure outside. Okay, you understand how transmural pressure works. If you have a wall, it's drawn. Do you understand this thing, or am I losing you? Never mind. Does anybody this one work? He's right. Okay, let's say you got 10 millimeters of mercury pressure here, you got 10 here. This wall is movable. Is it going to move anywhere? No. This one we got, right? Let's make this fine. Which way is the wall going to move? Yeah, it's going to come out this way, right? If we did the opposite, make this side, it'd move transmural pressure, right? Let's go further. Let's go 10, let's go 0. Which way is it going to move? Let's go -5. Which way is it going to move? Even more, right? That's all that's happening. You can make this 0. This is still -5. Which way is it going to go? It's going to expand. Inside your thorax, you're -4, 3, whatever number you are. When the veins near 0, guess what? The vein expands, right? This is a very simple concept. All right, we got caught up with this. So it expands. Over here, they're calling it a collapse. That's a physical collapse. If you want to equate your veins to a shopping bag you get from grocery stores here, you know what they're like, okay? You put it over a chair, all right? Well, guess what? Even if you're going through it, once you bend it, you're increasing pressure, right? You're collapsing, right? Same thing. Over a rib or armpit, it's called rib collapse. And it can overcome this, so I'm thinner, it can overcome this collapse. Venous return is coming up, right? So if you're putting flow through this grocery, I should bring some kind of experiment. Over a chair, you're pushing fluid up here, venous return. Fluid's going to build up, and as soon as it gets to the tip of that chair, boom, some will flow out, and then it'll come back down, right? The bag will flow. So it'll flutter. But you got venous return coming all the time. It'll overcome this rip. All it has to do is reach a higher pressure than here, and fluid moves. Is that right? But you might need more volume to get it to move. This is the interesting part. They go, the venous and the neck region are actually collapsed. That's right. So we'll get to that in a minute. And this is what I'm driving at. That's how distensible and compliant veins are. Right? You can just collapse them at atmospheric pressure. It's like a bag. That's why they're really good for storage, right? Arteries are not very compliant, you know. You remember this, right? You know this, right? We've been talking about this for a while, right? And this is from Guyton, right? Did you ever read the figure lesson? Did you read what's underneath it?
Nothing.
So he's been fooling everybody. Nobody reads this stuff, right? He's been fooling everybody. I've been fooling you too. If you read the legend, what is it telling you? Oh. Are we all laying down right now? I don't think so. You're sitting, I'm standing. The only time we lay down, maybe for 8 hours at night, if you get that much sleep. But that's only in a horizontal position, man. But I guess we better talk about this kind of thing if we're standing up. It's called gravity. And you see, this I would ordinarily put in the appendix and not talk about it. So I'm going to waste a couple of minutes. But there's those people that have problems with that, so I'll address it right here. It's called the gravity, hydrostatic pressure gradient. The column of fluid exerts pressure beneath it. And that pressure that's being exerted is dependent on the height of that column, okay? I think you heard of this submarine going too deep, what happens to them? It crumbles. You ever hear about that? Yeah. Well, let's take a look at this. You've got, these are the same resistance, if you will, fluids flowing out of here. But you notice at the bottom it's flowing much faster. All right? Okay, what's the difference? What's driving this fluid is this pressure gradient. That's how much pressure is, whatever that height is. And as soon as the water level gets down to here, no more flow. Right? No problem. Now, this fluid is being driven by this much of a pressure gradient. Okay? The higher the column of fluid, the more pressure exerted at the bottom. Does this make sense? Call it weight if you want. It weighs a lot and it's pushing down, right? So what does that tell you? So guidance wakes you up from a horizontal position and makes you stand up, right? This is from the book, and this is the venous system, right? The artery is called, it's your reference point, 0. Every time it pumps, 100 millimeters of mercury, mean pressure, we know that, right? All right, if you want to argue, 93.3 millimeters, or maybe 96, depending on which book it is. But 100 millimeters of mercury is being pumped out, right? But on the venous side, he's showing me this. Look at this. Yeah, it'll be around 0. Oh, 0. 90 millimeters of mercury in the vein. Wait a minute. We were just talking about maybe 5 or 6, right? Maybe 90 millimeters. How is that going to work? We need a pressure gradient to drive flow. It's got 90 millimeters of mercury. That's like your blood pressure, arterial pressure, right? How's that going to work? Guess what? He's only showing you the venous side. Maybe it's an introduction to him talking about it. It serves a good intro for me. You're going to have the same fluid column on the arterial side as well. Are you getting the hint now? And that's shown over here. Yeah, I'll copy minus 10, 100. Let's look at the bottom. The 0 reference, 100. On the arteries, yeah. But the arteries also have the same hydrostatic pressure gradients, right? You still have arteries and veins, both get the same thing. It's a fluid, it's sitting there. So your arteries are now sitting at 180 down here. 190, depending on which book you read. And you still have your pressure gradient. 90 millimeters, right? The same thing as if you were the same pressure gradient, right? No effect. So, even though we're dealing with gravity, it's affecting both the arterial and venous system identically. And you notice when you look at anatomy, arteries and veins are tracking with each other all the time. Did you ever notice that? They're running parallel in the venous system. Okay. They're not in different places. Is that okay? And they're showing you the pressures in different places. And it all depends on the hydrostatic pressure gradient, right? And over here at the rib, this is pretty close to the heart, right? You'd expect it to be a little bit lower, like 0, pretty close to 0, but it's +6. It's because as the venous return is coming up, right, it's got that compression in the rib. So you got to overcome that fold. You have to raise pressure a little bit just to, and then you're okay. All right? Yeah.
So we have the pressure in the vein above 90. So how is the blood going back to the heart with that pressure?
What pressure?
The 90. And the venous.
You've got 180 on the arterial side.
Then it will go to the vein.
Yeah.
But after the vein, how it's going back to the heart?
This pressure is higher than this pressure. You added 100 millimeters of mercury to everything, right? That's all you've done to the system. You still got a pressure gradient. Yes or no?
But how we overcome the gravity pressure? How the blood is going back to the heart from the veins?
How is it going back to the heart? Because the gradient over here is 90 millimeters mercury. Okay, it's going to be a 0, right? You still have a pressure gradient. No?
But this pressure is down or up?
Where?
The vein, the 90.
You got 100 now. Everywhere you go, up here. All right, if you're looking at the vein, what you're going to see is pressure up here. It's going to be, well, he's got it shortened right here. 70, 40. There's another one. 22. When it gets to here, it'll be 0. Because there's no hydrostatic pressure gradient anymore. You still have a pressure gradient all the way. And it's showing, is that right? This is in the venous system, right? You were wondering why you can go from 90 to 0? Well, it's going from 90. It went from 6 to 0 when you were laying down. You still got the heart pumping, forcing fluid through a closed system, right? Pressure gradient's going to drive it. But I'll tell you what you did bring up. You did bring up an important part about veins, and we'll cover that. Let's look above here, 0. Well, actually, there's two things. I'll think about two things. Right here in arterial, it's about 180 millimeters of mercury, right? Both have that hydrostatic pressure gradient, right? All right, we know that to measure blood pressure, we have to get a large artery, or we can get systolic and diastolic, right? You need a large artery. You go to an arteriole, you got small, it's going to be very difficult. So why don't we just measure pressure down here in a large artery? You're going to go, that's 180 over, whoops, that's hypertensive, but you never see that done. That's why they always do it at 0 level, or reference level atrium. And that's why when you go to a physician, or they tell you to take blood pressure, you sit down in a chair, or whatever, but they always put your heart at 0, right? So you're right level with your heart, right? And if you're laying down, it doesn't matter that much. You're pretty much at 0 anyway if you're laying down. But you'll never see people taking blood pressure in a leg. But then they'll be talking, you see, blood pressure was 180 over 120. Yeah. And you don't see a problem with your patient? Well, you know what I mean? They always use it as a reference point. You could technically do it that way. You just got to correct for the hydrostatic pressure rate. All right, let's go up with that. It's just the opposite. You're going to be removing pressure. It's going to be like a suction force. I'll use this and I'll remind you about it, an experiment where you go to the cafeteria, you get a straw, hopefully you can see through the straw, put the straw in a drink, and put your thumb over the top of the straw, close it off. Then lift the straw. That fluid's not going to pour out, is it?
Yes.
Did you ever do that?
Yes.
Yeah, it stays up there. But what's created is a little vacuum up here. If it's clear, you can see the space, right? That hydrostatic pressure is pulling. It's negative, right? It's pulling. And basically, they start subtracting things off. So I took some off here, here. You still got a pressure gradient driving. All right, now what's the importance of this reference point? 0. And it's hard for people who believe that these up here are negative. Over here, remember we talked about the neck? It's going to collapse, the jugular. All right, we've got to do a real quick experiment. If you've done it already. If you just, we're just sitting down, it may not work. If you hold your hands down and just take a look at your veins down here, you can see them. You should be able to. They're extended. There's a hydrostatic pressure column. Now, if you raise your hands above your heart level, they disappear. They collapse. Is that right?
Yes.
Hey, it's like that balloon cartoon, right? Hard to believe it's the same pressure in both those places. You go, but that's it. Unfortunately, what you've done is, by going above heart level, you went to pressure in the vein that's below outside pressure. And it simply collapses. That make sense? No.
Yes.
He doesn't like it. Some people don't like it. But that's what happens. So you get that? Now you will, when you see a pressure here, when you can see the vein here in the neck, that's pathology. Matter of fact, when you jugular vein, you can see it, that's called heart failure, ventricular failure, backup of pressure. The pressure is going above atmospheric. That's the only way. Besides going, yeah, this is where yeah. That's the only way. It's all transmural pressure gradient. You won't see this unless the pressure in the vein exceeds atmospheric. And usually it's negative, you don't see it. Just like if you were to hold your arms up here, you don't see these veins. You have to go below your heart, create, from that zero reference point, create a hydrostatic pressure gradient, and now you'll see it. Because you've got a hydrostatic pressure. Is that okay? Up here they say no collapse. That's the straw experiment I just talked about. Basically, they're not letting them collapse because the blood vessels themselves are attached physically to the cranium, to the skull. They can't collapse. You're not letting them. And it's just like that straw. You won't let the water leave, well, it's creating a negative pressure that you can see. Okay? And that's all it's doing. I don't know why he brings it up, but I guess if you're going to be a surgeon, he mentions that, a neurosurgeon, I guess, but you cut into the skull and you cut into this sinus area, the venous system, air gets sucked right in because of the atmospheric pressure, right? And with air being sucked into your vascular system, it's called air emboli. And you can die from that. Is that okay?
Yes.
One more thing about the veins, we'll talk about the valves real quick, and I think you've had this before. And you talk about varicose veins. Anyway, this is, I'll go over it real quick, venous pump. This is a tube, and if you squeeze it, obviously if you don't have valve, it has a choice. It can go in either direction, right? Not very helpful. But in the venous system, we want that flow to be directional. We want to make sure it always goes back toward the heart. And so we have valves. So when you constrict here, clamp, you notice they bring up a skeletal muscle here now that we're getting to reality. It's in the legs, okay? Let's say you're walking. You're going to constrict that. You're going to occlude the vein. Fluid's going to go in both directions. Well, can't go anywhere here because of the valve. You're going to force it that way, increasing venous return. You'll find that very helpful when you're exercising. Is that okay? That's pretty straightforward. That's what valves do. I don't care where they are. You have you've got valves in the heart, right? The aortic valve prevents backflow of blood back into the heart. If you know what they do, then you're okay. Venous pump, something people don't think about. Okay, this is a person standing, and in the ankle, you put a needle there in the ankle and the vein, and you're measuring pressure. All right, somewhere around 75, 80. We had 90, or guidance had 90. Doesn't really matter. It's high. That's more than what we're used to, right? Hey, almost 80 millimeters of mercury. And now this person starts to walk. And look at that. Boom, right down. Okay. All right, that makes sense. Walking is good for your veins, then I would say, right? You've got the same thing. What you're doing is compressing the vein. You've got the valve moving everything. So what you've done is using that venous pump, you've moved that blood volume from the vein back into the heart. Venous return and the cardiac. And you got rid of that hydrostatic pressure gradient. But you did more than that. You also disrupted the hydrostatic pressure column. Take a look at that. This is again, you're just standing there, high pressure, 100 millimeters of mercury. And the reason they're showing you the height, we're always talking about the height of the fluid column, right? That determines the pressure. The higher the column, the more the pressure at the bottom, right? All right. Now, when you've done this, started your venous pump, you're walking. Yes, you return venous blood up to the heart. You've also interrupted the hydrostatic column. The pressure being exerted on these veins down here is only due to 34 centimeters of fluid, only 27. So every time you're doing it, yes, you're using a venous pump to get rid of the column of fluid, but on top of that, every time you're moving, you're making sure your veins don't stay exposed to this. They get relief from interrupting the hydrostatic pressure. Is this okay?
Yes.
We'll mention them. You know what they are, right?
Yes.
Incontinent valve. Old age. Oh, there you go. Not me, but other people that get old. It's good. You know, it's going to go bad, right, as we get older. Like a car. After a while, you got to replace it. My wife's thinking about that. Anyway, you got an incompetent valve, it's not going to work. The blood pressure, hydrostatic column is going to be higher on the valve underneath it, and so on. Everything starts falling apart, right? More pressure, more pressure. All right. Where it becomes prolonged standing. If you have a job that requires standing, like standing at the podium, talking, how many students are there? Yeah, hey, God, think about that. You've been sitting, right, interrupting your hydrostatic column. Yeah, standing. But anyway, standing, okay. And one relief that people get from something like this is the physician will tell you, and when we get to edema as well. It's all due to pressure, capillary pressure. So what do you do? Go home, put your feet up. Did you ever hear that?
Yes.
They're not just saying put your feet up. They want your feet above the level of your heart. They want you to sit down, put your feet up, get that pressure off, get that hydrostatic column off of your veins. Right? We'll get to this, the same concept in edema, too much pressure. Anyway, the other one is pregnancy, which you don't have to worry about. But we mentioned the female, the fetus, compresses the abdominal, so it gets back, gets pushed back to where? Your vein. Where do you get varicose veins? Not in your arms usually, not in your face, in your legs. All the way down to where this hydrostatic pressure gradient is the most extreme. You may not get varicose veins, you stay healthy, but males get varicose veins too. But they're never going to show you a picture of an arm up here. They always show you bottom of leg, right? All right, pulmonary, that's pulmonary. This is a figure I like because it shows venous blood reservoir, right? Don't you get the impression that this is going to store blood volume just from looking at the picture? Yeah, and it also shows compliance and sensibility. You know what's going to happen with constriction, right? They're going to constrict here, and then you're going to move. All I say is transfer to the arterial side, right? People go, how are you going to do that? Well, you know, it's all closed. It's going to have to work that way. If it doesn't, you've got problems. If it doesn't work that way, too much blood ends up in the pulmonary. You got pulmonary congestion. You got problems, right? Either way, it's not good. But generally, what the veins do is move or transfer blood from the venous side to the arterial side. It's your reservoir. You can call on it, make up for loss of blood volume, etc. Help to increase venous return. Keep things going. And this gives you an example of what to do. I mean, know the muscle pump and exercise. That's helpful too. All these things increase venous return. Keep pushing it down. And that, remember in exercise, you haven't had that yet, I guess. You never talked about exercise? You got like a 4-fold increase in cardiac output. So you need a 4-fold increase in venous return, otherwise it's not going to work. You'll get that later. The other reservoir that guidance brings up is the spleen. It's not so important in humans as it is in other animals, like dogs. Dogs got a huge spleen. And when it contracts with sympathetic activation, large volume comes out. But more importantly, there's a lot of RBC. The spleen sequesters or keeps RBC. And I'll show you why in the next lecture. But anyway, in a human, it's not so much. Maybe 100 mils or something can be moved out of the spleen, but it's also going to be rich in RBC. So if you need oxygen, you're getting oxygen-rich blood in a way, being pumped. We're going to go to the microcirculation now. We know this by heart now, right? We're down to where? Level of the capillary? I agree, the thin wall. The only thing we got is meningeal. Well, they were kind enough to give it a basement membrane, but the only cell they had was a meningeal cell, right? That's a pretty thin wall, right? And we also know that someone counted them and recorded it as 10 billion. A lot of them, right? All right, huge cross-section, you know that too, right? Let's take a look at that. And it's the site of exchange. We've seen this before, right? So at the level of the capillary, huge cross-sectional area, a lot of them, right? Velocity is low, good for exchange, right? Now there's two things that happen, and I'll reinforce it with the next slide. It's easier to show on the next slide, but The more capillaries you have, the more surface area you have, right?
Yes.
And also, the more capillaries you have, every cell is very close to a capillary. So the diffusion distances for oxygen is very small. Right? If this cell is over here and the only capillary that's open over here, oxygen has to go all the way here. You open up this one, well, there, you increase surface area and you decrease diffusion distance when you do this. And that's all that is. And you can do this, and your organs do it, by adjusting capillary sphincter tone. You heard of capillary sphincter?
Yes.
Right in front of the capillaries. They're either open or closed. They either open them up or close them up. All right, the cute picture here shows you the size. We're going to be dealing with sizes here. You don't have to know the number. No one's going to ask you what's the micron of how many microns is the diameter of a capillary. I don't even know. I'm glad I wrote it down. But anyway, it's about 7. So is the RBC, which means sometimes they squeeze through. They get deformed. They're deformable, actually. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of it. It's called rouleau. They're flattened, shooting through a narrow capillary. The point is, look how close they are to the endothelium. Talk about diffusion distances. They're right there. You want oxygen? Whoop. Right there. Right? Perfect for diffusion. Right? So all the capillaries are very small, about the size of a red blood cell. Okay. This is called vasomotion. All right, let's take a look at this. For now, don't worry about this artery being bigger than this one. We're talking about vasodilation here. Let's look at precapillary sphincters, okay? And vasomotion means just this is going between here and here. What's going on? Here, little activity. You're not using a lot of oxygen, let's say. Okay. All of a sudden, there's a little bit of activity. Transport activity, exercise activity, contracting muscles, whatever it is the organ does, you know. All of a sudden, you need the oxygen, whoop, opens up. And that's why they have it. If tissue oxygen goes down, you're using too much, they'll dilate to keep that oxygen there for you, right? How do they do that? Increase capillary surface area. And if the cell's sitting out here, increasing diffusion distance. We'll come back to this slide, but if you're looking at a capillary bed, you'll be seeing this through a microscope. Same capillary bed, 1 minute later, will look like this. Then it'll come back. So what you got is a dynamic. The capillary bed is on, off, depending on minute to minute the needs of that particular organ. You know, it's not going to be, you know, things change. But that capillary on, off, just like that. You'll find the same thing with arterioles. That's why they call it a tone, on, off, depending on what's going on with that organ. Right? And we'll come back to it. But we're going to talk about capillary, and we're just going to say here's a capillary. Assume it's perfused. Assume it has blood flow going through it. We're not talking about how much, how little. It's an average capillary is what we're talking about. Not vasomotion, which is the way they exist. All right, let's take a look at the capillaries. We're going to be talking about 3 kinds of capillaries. We'll get to that in a minute. How do things move across it? First, we're going to talk about solutes, how they move. Then we're going to get involved in fluid movement. That's going to be tomorrow. Solutes, we got small solutes, large solutes. Okay. Lipid-soluble substances, gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide, lipid soluble. They can move across the whole capillary membrane. Right? If they're lipid-soluble, they can move across that membrane. It's not a problem. You come up with something water-soluble, even sodium chloride or glucose, they can't get across the lipid membrane. Remember that to get those things into cells, you have to transport them. You remember GI, right?
CGLT.
Those are tough ones. Okay, anyway. Sodium, chloride, glucose, amino acids, these they go right through what we call pores. Well, Guyton calls them pores. Other people call them either intercellular junction, intercellular clefts. They are actually intracellular junctions. You've heard of tight junctions, things like that? Have you had this stuff before? They hook cells together, and that's what they're showing you here. It's between the cells, right? These are tight junctions, and sometimes referred to as pores. Proteins, larger substances, they have a more difficult time getting through the pore. Usually proteins stay in circulation, okay? We'll come back to that a little bit later. How do proteins get across for large substances? You heard of phagocytosis, pinocytosis, endocytosis, that kind of thing. Internally, you take, what you're doing is you're just grabbing some blood and transferring it to the other side, or plasma, if you will, right? And these are vesicles. You heard of vesicles?
Yes.
Caveolae, same thing. Caveolae, the name comes from the word that looks like a cave. I guess. That's why they're named, because they look like little cave, bottle-shaped caves. But anyway, then they call it caveolae. Don't worry about these proteins. You must have gotten them somewhere in foundation block or something, phospholipid and caveolae, you know? Biochemistry, good. I'm glad you got it somewhere anyway. But anyway, yeah, caveolin is what causes this membrane to bulge out like that, or bulge in. Anyway, you got these vesicles, we call them caveolae, and he brings up vesicular channels. Let's look over here. So vesicles work like this, you know. Let's say you're on this side and you've got protein floating around. Well, protein, large molecules will get trapped in this vesicle, right? And with time, this vesicle will start moving, gets to the other side, opens up and lets it out. That's called vesicular transport, or caveolar transport. Picks it up on one end, but it takes a long time to move across the cell by vesicle. And then after also, it takes time to open up and dump on the other side, right? So they have something called transendothelial channel, or if you want to follow guidance, vesicular channel. The point being it's coming from vesicle. Most people think that these transendothelial channels form when these vesicles is a special technique. They restructured it inside of the membrane, three-dimensional, and it's a caveolae. And if they fuse, you can see a channel form. If you want to look at it, if these things fuse, you've opened up a channel. It may not be straight, it may be crooked, but you open up a channel. And guess what? That channel is going to be the same width as the caveolae, right? Because that's what's making it. Let's look at that. And we like numbers, we'll fool around with numbers. We're only going to cover three kinds of capillaries. Continuous, fenestrated, and sinusoidal, okay? I don't know what you covered in histology, but just look what this says, continuous. So now you know it's not going to have fenestra, right? Because another term for it is non-fenestrated, right? No fenestra, continuous. And here, obviously I didn't draw this. Intracellular cleft, tight junction, right through here, right? We know if it's going to go here. We already know that. Water and small soluble. Lipid soluble substance, nobody cares. It goes right through. Let's take a look at that. All I got these numbers for is for you to think of size. If you have a channel, the only thing that's going to move down that channel is something that fits in that channel. Is that about right? Pretty simple concept, right? Okay, intracellular cleft about 5 nanometers wide. Forget the nanometer, but it's 5. I don't care what you want, 5 miles wide. But they're 5, okay? That's the space, 5. Here we're using all the same units. Caveolae are 50. Transendothelial cells, surprise, surprise, 52. If they're made from caveolae fusing, it's going to be the same dimension, right? So it's going to be about the same. And that's where here. But if they're made from these caveolae, it's going to be about the same dimension, 57. Well, what solutes are we talking about? Don't have to know the numbers, remember that. We're talking 0.3 to 3. So what are we talking about? Water, sodium chloride, glucose, like on the other side. And that's these things. Well, they go through here, no problem. Is that right? They go right through the tight junction, right through the intraendothelial junction. Water, right? Protein, I picked albumin because it's a major one, right? Mostly albumin, plasma protein, mostly albumin. Globulins are another one, they're even bigger. As far as albumin is concerned, that's pretty close. 6, that plus minus, pretty close. It's going to be a tight fit, so we'll say pass with difficulty. Maybe some will get through, right? Most of them will use the caveolae. Why? Thick, no problem, 50%, right? 1/10 the size, they'll get through that way, right? But this is a slow process caveolae. This is faster if it's opened up. These are continuous. You find these kind of capillaries where you don't have to do a lot of fluid movement. You're not interested in moving fluids, solutes, anything else. What are you going to find? Skin. It's mostly a heat exchange in the skin, right? Skeletal muscle. Heart. Thank God for that. Lung. So I got brain in red because there's something called the blood-brain barrier. It's an extreme case of a continuous capillary. The tight junctions are very complex in the brain and numerous, really tight. Even glucose doesn't get across brain capillaries very readily through the tight junction. The brain has to, you know, the brain needs glucose. That's what it uses. Major energy source is glucose. It has to transport it across the endothelium using SGLTs, right? Just like we had in the GI and in the kidney. Anyway, it's a nice thing, this blood-brain barrier, because whatever's happening in our body, hormones flying around, norepinephrine, anything else, doesn't affect the brain. And you don't want the brain exposed to all these chemicals and things we deal with, right? All right, so it protects the brain from anything that's happening systemically. On the bright side, you can give patients and people certain drugs, knowing that these drugs don't affect brain function, so they can't get through. On the other hand, if you're a neuropharmacologist and you're interested in depression or seizures or whatever you're interested in, Alzheimer's, it's very difficult to design drugs to get into the brain to deal with the problem. You understand? So it's a two-edged sword. But the blood-brain barrier is a well-developed intraendothelial cell class. And they also don't have, I don't want to say all or none, they have 1,000 to 1 billion, someone counted it, they have very few caveolus, all right, or transendothelial channels. Mostly through tight junctions, and these tight junctions are very tight. There are some areas of the brain that are open for a reason. We'll get to that when you get to, I guess when you get to neuro or something, whether they cover brain, you're going to be covered in brain circulation. This okay? Continuous capillaries. They're tight, we call it sometimes tight capillaries, okay? Let's go to fenestra. That's a fenestra. You've seen a fenestra. Somebody's shown you, right? Yeah. Here's a fenestra. Cute little thing. These are right in the endothelial cell. This is not an intracellular junction. This is right inside the endothelial membrane, plasma membrane, and this is called the diaphragm. It's a piece of a plasma membrane that covers it, right? You've heard that term before, diaphragm? All right, fenestrae, fenestra. Now, what's the point of this? All right, here's these numbers again, right? Remember, you don't have to memorize them. You got 5 nanometers here. We know what caveoli are, transendothelial channel. You still have that. You have that here, just like you did in the continuum. Fenestrae with diaphragm. The fenestrae also, this guy was going after his second Nobel Prize or something. He was saying they come from caveolae, transendothelial channels that created a membrane in there. Okay? And I think on the created membrane almost looks like a fenestra, right? Or a diaphragm. He didn't get the Nobel for this, but he had proposed a hypothesis how they're formed. But here's your fenestra. Guess what? Yeah, they are. 50 to 70 nanometers. Just like, look at it. Not much difference here, right? But the diaphragm, guess what that is? It's a net. It's like a sieve covering the fenestra, right? And guess what the size of the holes are in that net? Just like the cellular cleft. So they, just like these things. So they, remember the proteins? They won't get through very much, very difficult. But man, can a lot of water and solids get through, right? Huge amounts of fluid can move. All right. But they're still restricted. And you'll see in the liver, we just take the diaphragms off. Yeah? But for now, penetrating capillaries, they appear in certain organs, and the proteins they'll get through, but they'll have a difficult time, just like they had here, for getting across 5 nanometers. So the diaphragm fenestrae act like these size pores, right? Basically. But now they're covering the whole endothelium. It's not just between endothelial cells, it's inside the endothelial cells. So you can imagine how much water, sodium chloride, you can move, but you're still holding back most of the protein. Where they show up, they're exocrine glands, remember your GI tract, new amounts of fluid secreted or absorbed Goes in the blood or comes out of the blood. That fluid goes in and out of the capillary. Salivary gland, blood flow even increases, but all these fenestra facing the gland is putting out the water. So it can get that water very easily through these fenestra. What keeps their protein in the blood? Okay, not having that much. Glomerulus, you have a filtration. Huge amounts of plasma get filtered through the capillaries, through the glomerulus, right? They're fenestrated. And what that means, you can move a huge amount of plasma to there, keep most of the protein, right? But they're fenestrated because that's a lot of plasma you move in a minute through the capillary wall at the glomerulus. You haven't had renal yet, so you know. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Discontinuous or sinusoidal, we'll get out of here. This will be the last slide. Yep. Sinusoid, all right. Discontinuous, that's giving you something already. No longer a continuous blood vessel, right? All right, this is easy. Fenestrate, yep, that's 1570. We kind of memorized that. Fenestrate, but no diaphragm. They're trying to show you here, smaller bag, but there's no diaphragm. It's wide open. So it might as well be a capillary tract in the endothelial channel going through the endothelium, right? You're going to move everything. Oh, okay. Intracellular gas, that's shown here. Sinusoidal gas. The endothelial cells are actually separated. Look at the size of that thing. Well, forget it. Cells get through. Remember we were talking about the liver and macrophages, the Cooper cells? They move in and out of these sinusoids. They just travel in and out, looking for things that are coming from the GI tract. That maybe you're a want, right? Maybe the phagocytosis. We'll get it again. Spleen is another place. Remember we said the spleen contains a high concentration of RBC? And sequesters the RBC. They can get through these huge gaps. Look, well, I mean, it's way bigger than protein, right? Cells get through it. All right, you guys, come on.